I find that in the public sphere, people are looking for black and white. It's very easy in the mainstream to look for black and white. You're either a superhero or a supervillain, and it's difficult for people to understand that sometimes you can be a bit of both.
We had in the wake of all of this, many who have been full-throated in their praise for Ali Khamenei, the Iranian supreme leader who has been killed, and calling him the greatest martyr of Jerusalem, calling him the greatest martyr of the Ummah. We know what had occurred in relation to wide-scale massacres in Syria that killed up to 1 million people and had led to so much imprisonment, so many refugees.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم نحمده ونصلي على رسوله الكريم وبعده رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. أهلا وسهلا بكم. I am pleased to be joining you for this session. It's not a very easy session or very pleasurable session, but it's necessary. We have our dear brother and colleague Mln Ebrahim Moosa with us from the Palestine Information Network. أهلا وسهلا بكم. السلام عليكم.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته. Mawlana Shah, Jazakallah khairan, Ramadan Kareem to you and all the viewers.
وإياكم خيرا barakallah feek. When we speak, often when we speak in the public platform, it's usually under not the best of circumstances. But Maulana, this has come as a surprise. What's happening in the world today?
I don't think so. The tone of your question already perhaps presupposes the answer. Nothing is totally outlandish in the world today. As everybody says, when you have come out of something as somber and something as shape-shifting as the genocide in Gaza, what else can be a surprise after that? And in actual fact, many ulama or reputable people have been saying, expect the unexpected after this, that perhaps things have to get worse before they get better. And we all knew that the justice of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to exact itself, or the plan of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to play itself out. And perhaps what we are seeing is now what has been predicted. But I think what really took me by surprise, or not by surprise, but something more extraordinary, is, you just go to sleep. Generally in Ramadan, we've seen when it comes to Palestine, things do get very volatile. The previous attacks on al-Aqsa, everything happens a very hot period in Palestine during Ramadan. So you have that in the back of your mind when Ramadan starts. But then suddenly you wake up and, your sleep patterns in Ramadan are all kind of topsy-turvy. And you wake up mid-morning and you suddenly find a whole stream of messages, this kind of quote-unquote world war has begun while you've slept. But more surprising than that is perhaps how this has played out for me in the Gulf countries and areas that were considered havens of materialism and havens of safety, and were in the forefront, obviously, of very problematic deals, etc., how they've been thrust into the center of all of this. I think that's more than, the Israel-Iran-America nexus. What's happening in these Gulf countries is really the key takeaway of how quickly things can change and how this entire region is extremely vulnerable.
Yes, salam, yes, salam. Maulana, currently there's lots of discussion and debate online in the Islamic space, if we can call it that, from various role players and voices. I think in the general public sphere, people would like guidance. People would like to know. I mean, I've heard some very interesting questions over the last couple of days, questions that somewhat worrisome, but also understandable. Questions like, should we make dua for them? How should we be feeling about them? What should we be thinking at this point in time? Those are very telling questions. And people ask you, what should I be thinking? What should I be feeling? Should I be making dua? So amidst the confusion and the ambiguity, Maulana, it is important for us as scholars of Islam and students of Islam to try to sift out the black from the white, from the gray, and to try and make as much sense of an unclear situation as we possibly can. What is the most important point to guide our understanding of this information according to you, Maulana?
Yeah, the key point obviously is, according to me, it's a big responsibility to ask such a question. It's a big responsibility to talk about it. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guide what we say. And
Ameen.
we always would have to put that disclaimer that even in all of this, there's a great degree of fallibility that the viewer needs to understand. So I would feel this is the build-up, Morana, of something that has been in the making for a long period of time. We know that the Israeli state was always genocidal. The Israeli state was always pursuing a racist ideology. But we have seen a drastic change in its approach since the genocide. And I always go back to a tweet by a brother by the name of Jihad Abu Salim, who showed the progression or the evolution of how Israelis responded to massacres. So previously they would say when something happened, they would be quick to deny we didn't do it. And thereafter they would say we did it, but it was a mistake. And thereafter they progressed to saying we did it, and so what if we did it? And they have now come to the point where we did it and we will do it to all of you. And that's basically the mantra of, unofficially of Israeli politics. And therefore, during the genocide, we found during a particular point, I still remember this headline where Israel attacked 6 countries in 72 hours. There was that period where in 72 hours, starting obviously with Gaza, then Lebanon was a hot front at that time, Syria, Tunisia, when the flotilla was set to depart, and then Qatar, where the resistance delegation was there, and Yemen. So what we gather out of this, Molana, was that Israel is not keen to let any country show any inkling of strength. It's keen to dominate. It's keen to keep countries divided and weak and ensure that the region does not get back on its feet. And that was, like I said, it was always the Israeli character, but they have seen October the 7th as that opportunity to be able to go full throttle with this particular identity. They don't look at your words. They don't look at your shades. They don't look at which side of the religious divide you stand. They merely look at your gestures or your intent, and based on that, it assesses one's capacity or one's future capacity, and if it is deemed a threat, then they seek to eliminate it. And therefore, we've come from that to the discussion that's become open after that, where Netanyahu has spoken about backing the Greater Israel Project. And thereafter, you had Huckabee, just prior to this, perhaps not a slip as it's intended, it was actually very deliberate to say that, to set the tone for what is going to come thereafter. So I think this, if I were to put it at this is the key point: understanding Israeli motivations politically at this point in time, where they have gone from buying calm conflict management to assessing capabilities of others and paralyzing them from the outset before they have the potential to be able to pose a threat to Israel. So this is the evolution that has occurred, Maulana, during the period of the genocide. And October the 7th, we always say that the Israelis were taken off guard, but then they dusted off all plans to be able to see if there was a moment, this is now the moment to be able to reshape the region. And then when it comes to American politics, they find that they will not find possibly anybody in the past or in the future who is as compliant to Israeli desires as Donald Trump. So put all of this together, this is their moment, and what Netanyahu has in mind is the destruction of any budding or existing regional powers. So I feel this is where the discussion should be, that the Israeli aggression on Iran is in this particular context, and therefore we are we can fully then put our understanding of who is the victim and who is the aggressor in this particular context, going for any power in the region. And if we orientate our compass in that particular regard, I think it would hopefully simplify some of the other discussion points.
Excellent, Jazakumullah khairan. And I think it's important to be able to put things in perspective in that way and understand what is our top priority at this moment. Because when the schoolyard has a rabid bully who's essentially beating up all the kids, and the kids are busy fighting among one another as to who's the best behaved kid and who should be friends with who, while this bully is busy beating up everyone, it would be foolish. Because as kids we should all then stand together and say, listen here guys, we need to get rid of this bully, and we'll get back to schoolyard tactics after we can get back to our playground games and our recess and our lunches after. Maulana, there's also been a sort of a sentiment that has come out that, look, this is one oppressor against another, and there's no victim here, so we should just sit back, relax, and watch them have it out at each other. What's your take on this perspective?
Well, that's an established concept within the deen, where وَكَذَلِكَ نُوَلِّي بَعْدَ الظَّالِمِينَ, the ayat in the Quran that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speak about that, or the du'as that classically have been made through various, people of the Salaf. Allahumma ahliki al-zalimeen bil-zalimin wa akhrijna min bayni aydihim salimin. So that's an established concept that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala deals with one oppressor against another oppressor. And there's no denying that in a particular context, Iran and its proxies, especially the Assad regime, are undoubtedly very serious aggressors. And that's why I made the point in the first intervention to say that this is not an attack on Iran per se. It is attack on any edifice of strength in the region. And if we look at it in that particular way, one would then understand that the victim currently is not only Iran, it is the entire region. And therefore, if we purely see this in the sense of oppressor against oppressor, we are then saying that this is an attack purely on Iran. Whereas in the other context that I've put forward, it's an attack on the region, with Iran being one symptom or one cog in the wheel that the American-Israeli axis seeks to dismantle, amongst many other cogs, or amongst many other spokes.
As they expressed it, essentially the first cog. They've made no qualms about it.
Perfect, because they've said to quote their words, the radical Shiite axis and the radical Sunni axis, or Syria is very much in the crosshairs, Pakistan is very much in the crosshairs, all established from the expressions of Netanyahu, etc. So I think when it comes to the question that you're asking, the oppressor against oppressor, that is the realm of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If I am not fighting directly against Iran to avenge what has occurred in Syria, or if I am not physically taking part to be able to ascertain justice, then the battle that's happened, what is happening on the global scale between Iran and the United States of America, I cannot only look at it through that realm of oppressor against oppressor, because that is the realm within which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala operates, and his wisdom is discernible in those ways, but we cannot actually say definitively how this is playing out in the wider plan of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which brings us down then to the human level of what is required of me in such a situation. And many people would say, no, this is the way of justice being exacted for what has happened in Syria. Firstly, we should realize that if people feel that through this Iran will be weak and those who have been dispossessed previously will become strong, we have to perhaps interrogate that a bit further to say that if Iran is getting weak and there is a power behind the scenes with that level of power that would be able to fill the vacuum that's being left with Iran, then perhaps that would hold true. But we know that there isn't on the horizon any particular power, whether it is a Sunni power, whether it is any other African power, BRICS power, whoever, would be able to fill that gap. And therefore, in this particular situation, when Iran is weakened, it is just decreasing one more lever of power before the Americans and the Israelis could go on to the next. So I think that's key to be able to understand this particular point, that this is not just to crush the Iranians and shatter its regional network, but to use this vacuum to expand Israel's control over the region of the whole. And the big talk at the moment is a new Sykes-Picot. The American ambassador Tom Barak spoke about this, that Sykes-Picot is old. Now we need to be able to further dismantle these existing societies into pieces. And therefore, I think in this particular moment, we do not need to love Iran. We do not need to love its beliefs, but we need to understand the aggression on the region, to reiterate again, as a whole, and that in this particular sense, Iran is definitely the victim of this particular plot for the moment, but it is one cog before others are going to be attacked. And therefore, there is no harm, in my opinion, to express solidarity with them in this particular context, in this limited sense of how they are yet one of many victims, or one of many parties that are in the crosshairs at the moment.
Tamam. Maulana, you've also suggested some principles in relation to guiding our responses, one of which was saying very clearly, don't be naive, don't try to oversimplify this situation, which I couldn't agree with more, because I find that in the public sphere, people are looking for black and white. It's very easy in the mainstream to look for black and white. You're either a superhero or a supervillain, and it's difficult for people to understand that sometimes you can be a bit of both. What exactly did you mean when you say don't be naive or don't oversimplify?
So, Mara, this is where it gets perhaps a bit more tangible in terms of the examples that I would use. We had in the wake of all of this, many who have been full-throated in their praise for Ali Khamenei, the Iranian supreme leader who has been killed, and calling him the greatest martyr of Jerusalem, calling him the greatest martyr of the Ummah, etc. And from that particular point of view, I want to really critique the idea that some have made Iran the Qibla of resistance, have made Iran the barometer to be able to assess whether a person is truly supporting Palestine or not. And we can go deeper to say that many people who are actually saying this seem to suggest that they're doing it out of concern for the Ummah, and they are doing this out of concern for the resistance and an assertive stance against the oppressor. But we need to not dig very far to say that what I am saying today is ideologically motivated. Nobody is totally objective. And many of these platforms, if one has to interrogate them, actually have a lot of ideological baggage behind them. But the bigger problem that I am raising a bone with is, why should the pure barometer of whether one is supporting Palestine or not be seen through Iran? For me, it is my Islamic principles, my degree of solidarity. It is the connection that is taught to us in the Sunnah about what is my responsibility to Palestine. It should be about the people of Palestine, centering the people of Palestine, centering the resistance of Palestine, and centering Masjid al-Aqsa. But what this particular mindset has made it to make Iran, and whether one agrees or not with Iran, to be the barometer of whether one supports the Palestinian cause or not, which is totally out of place. And furthermore, when we talk about Iran in this particular scenario, and we're always saying there's multiple stances that one can have in a particular scenario. So in this, Iran is the victim, the Iranian people are the victims, and they are part of this broader, the target of a broader conspiracy that targets the entire region. But at the same time, I can come to it with the objective of keeping my beliefs intact and not compromising on my beliefs. And I can come to this discussion as well, recognizing that in another context, the Iranians are huge oppressors and aggressors, as people of the region adduce. So that's why I would say it is fair to acknowledge that Iran is one solitary state in the region that has supported the resistance. The resistance do not hide that particular fact, and most other states in the region entered into shameful alliances with the Zionist entity. But Iran is an ambitious regional state which has its own calculations and priorities. This is a state that has interests and ambitions like everybody else, which it does not make its only motivation being resistant. So look at Iran as well as a state with competing interests that's not purely motivated out of a clear moral conscience. And the last point, perhaps, here we have to deal with the discussions, Moana, about Shiism, whereby some in the public use Iran as the standard, and I'm paraphrasing some of the arguments here of our teacher, your teacher particularly, rahimahullah, Mulana Taha Karaan, rahimahullah, who would say that the lay public only has one standard whereby to be able to judge Shiism, which is a high-profile image of the Iranian revolution and the establishment of the Islamic Republic. It is totally in order for a person politically in a limited sense to be able to say, I relate to Iran in this and that, and I like that they are prioritizing strength, and I like that they are prioritizing independence. But where the problem arises is where admiration for those limited aspects extends into admiration for Shia theology, and thereby excusing Shia theology and simplifying Shia theology. And I've seen a post recently where people are saying, hasn't al-Azhar said that Shia is but one branch of Islam, as if it is so simple, as if al-Azhar is the only, with respect to them, but they are not the only authority in Muslim law, and fatwa are sometimes politically motivated, etc. So the key point I want to make here is, while it is okay in a certain sense to recognize the Iranians as a victim, that big leap from politics to theology is extremely problematic. It's a huge problem, and people who do not know sufficient about Shiism have now second-guessed what is about. When you use a word like a martyr, that is a theologically loaded concept. And do not think, and this is not the point of the discussion in detail, but people, would just say, and that's also not trivializing it, people would just say this is the antagonism or the gulf between the Sunni world and the Shia world is only about perhaps the Shia disrespect for the Sahaba. No, it is, you go to concepts such as imamate, where they would believe that they have more knowledge than the Anbiya, that the imams have made a covenant with covenant, and one is to make dua. The Anbiya make a dua through the wasila of these imams, and the imams have the ability to give life to the dead. This has a serious impact on that idea of the finality of prophethood. And therefore, wider questions of belief and disbelief come into the picture. And therefore, this is a caution to say, do not oversimplify and do not take that wild leap from what is a legitimate humanitarian or political stance to just saying it's kumbaya and we are going to be able to express creedal unity, which is a total impossibility in my view.
Jazakumullah khairan. A few years ago, Mln Karaan had a series of lectures on tashayyu in the public sphere. It is primarily focused at teachers and students and ulama, but it was also open to the general public, and these recordings are still available. They are quite lengthy, but they are worth the listen, especially for those who are finding themselves in a confused space about tashayyu right now. It is a bit high level. But one thing that I want to just bring out from there is that what's interesting is the very same arguments and confusion that were laid at his feet all those many years ago, rahimahullah ta'ala, many of them could be replayed right now, and it would sound as though the person asked the question right now and the answer was given right now. And to summarize many of it, I'd like to state that while he was unequivocal about the differences between Ahlul Sunnah and the Shia, specifically the Ithna Ashariya. I mean, the entire series was about highlighting these differences, some of which you've alluded to, and demonstrating that these are far more serious than people would like them to be. But at the same time, at every instance where there was an attempt to push him to say that they are outside of the fold of Islam, that they are kafir, or that we should not be standing with them, he stood his ground, rahimahullah ta'ala, and he said he will not go that route because that is not the route of the majority of scholars of Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah. And he would quote examples of an incident in the time of Sayyidina Ali and Sayyidina Muawiyah. Historically, I haven't come across an authentic narration for this particular incident, but where a governor would want to side with the one against the other, only to hear him refuse, only to hear him being utterly refused and being told that, you know what, while we are having internal differences among one another, don't you for a second think that we will trespass against each other's rights and stand, alongside you. And I think it's so important that at this stage, our Ummah is able to realize that while we have what I would call and categorize as irreconcilable differences between Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah and the Shia, these remain internal differences that will be discussed internally with our scholars, with education, with clarity, etc. But what we are finding now is an external existential threat that we are all essentially faced by, and it's time to, instead of looking inwards and fight with each other, make a determination of, look, there are certain things that take priority over others, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. Maulana, you mentioned the there's importance of being just and being consistent in our approach. Your comments on the importance of that in this regard, Maulana?
So this applies on many levels, but this is a very broad principle that I need to question myself of, and everybody needs to question themselves of, because we are all socialized in a particular way, and life experience causes us to take certain decisions and certain stances that we subconsciously do not realize. So the key principle is يا أيها الذين آمنوا كونوا قوامين بالقسط شهداء لله ولو على أنفسكم. One ayah, and the other ayah يا أيها الذين آمنوا كونوا قوامين لله شهداء بالقسط ولا يجرمنكم شنآن قوم على ألا تعدلوا. So the concept of justice asserted very clearly in these ayat, whereby we are told to stand up for justice even if it is against our own selves, our parents, our family. Or we're told to say that the hatred of a people, legitimate hatred of a people, should not stop you from doing justice. So yeah, I think this principle is something we need to be acutely aware in this particular point, because we are totally aggrieved. We know what had occurred in relation to wide-scale massacres in Syria that killed up to 1 million people and had led to so much imprisonment, so many refugees. So that is an open wound for us as the Ummah against the Iranians and the proxies, and justice still needs to be done in this world as well as in the year after for that particular crime. So we have, I would argue in that sense, a genuine despisal of the actions that they've carried out. But in this particular context, we are still required to exercise the modicum of justice. And here I would say we find perhaps certain examples where people would allege that everything about Iran is treachery and it's secret connivance with the West. There are examples of that. There's Iran Contra. There's many examples of that. But sometimes we fail to acknowledge the inconvenient truth that who killed Nasrallah, who killed Khamenei. It was those people that some would allege these entities were in open collaboration with. Yes, they did collaborate. I'm not denying what happened in Afghanistan and what happened in Iraq, but the fact that they were also the target of their bombings shows that it's much more complex than you would like to admit. Acknowledging the support of Iran and players such as Hezbollah to the Palestinians. Again, it's not that they were the be-all and end-all. There were other players as well who assisted, but they do not shy away from acknowledging it. So if I am able to acknowledge everything, but then when they say these things, I just shut it off or I shoot it down, then am I being truthful or am I being upright in my particular judgment? We will also then ask the question in terms of justice, that while there is a lot that we say, a person will say, let's be consistent, let us stand with the civilians, but how much have we actually spoken about the civilians who have been killed in this particular war, more than engaging into the wider tricky debates that are occurring? So how much time have we actually spent genuinely valuing Iranian civilians that were killed, rather than engaging in the other kind of side discussions? And also I find there is this dichotomy, Mora, where we would readily say in one context that what Western agencies, what Western government says is propaganda. But when that propaganda, when Iran has allegedly killed so many protesters, then suddenly people are ready, because of antagonism to Iran, to accept that propaganda. That's not justice. That you use one standard in one particular situation in another situation. And to extend this, further, obviously, to people on the other side, that consistency is lacking greatly, whereby you ask for full solidarity when it comes to killings out in Iran, but you have ignored the elephant in the room, which is on the scales of a couple of genocides in Gaza numerically, which is what had occurred in Syria. So we're also asking for a very high standard of justice to be upheld by you, because of your other claims in this regard.
Subhanallah, beautiful advice there, Maulana. You mentioned that there were two important matters that we should not forget about. I'd like you to touch on those, Bismillah.
So I won't take too long to be able to go through this. The first is a message of power. And the message of power is a message that Iran has learned as well. Because when many people have come with a legitimate criticism that Iran had been far too cautious in the early days after October the 7th, when Gaza was facing a total war of annihilation, it got suckered into negotiations, and it felt that it was safe if it continued with its negotiations. They fought back, but they always kept it at a degree of deterrence and weren't wanting to go on the offensive. They have now learned the message that failing to exercise power is only to your detriment, and the Israelis and the Americans are going to come for you. And therefore, this is a message to all of the countries in the region. If you're going to just play for time and not take a more assertive stance, it's going to come to bite you. If you are going to fall into the trap of the divisions that are created, it's just a matter of the three cows story, the legendary three cows story. They'll deal with Iran and they're going to come to you thereafter. But bringing that message more home, it's also vital to understand that we need to now talk this discourse of power. The discourse of power, and power is not a bad word. Power is a word that even if one doesn't exercise that power, but it creates a level of deterrence. It makes the aggressors think twice before they approach you if you have the necessary power. So that's an important discussion within our community. The second is relating to this sentiment that I've seen during the month of Ramadan, where people would say, do not be distracted by what is happening and still focus on your ibadah. And I want to interrogate that concept to say that why do you limit the idea of ibadah to doing good acts of worship limited to the masjid and the home? What about what is outside of that? When you say just be a good Muslim and Allah will sort it out, what is your strategy? What is your ibadah strategy for challenging tyranny locally as well as abroad? So I'm not at ease with that concept of saying just shut it all off and concentrate on your ibadah. Do not get carried away to the extent that you neglect your salah, you neglect your sawm, you neglect your tilawah, but also preoccupy yourselves with finding solutions in this particular moment. And that is part of the spirit of Ramadan, as expressed even in the lifetime of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam through the conquest of Makkah in Ramadan and the Battle of Badr in Ramadan. And lastly, we have to always center Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the discussion, and we remind ourselves, Wallahu ghalibun ala amri. In all of this, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we perhaps can read some wisdoms and we could read it correctly or read it incorrectly. That's our own endeavor, which we should not get too caught up with, but we can just have that yaqeen, Wallahu ghalibun ala amri. Biyadika al-khayr. You know, as the Mufassirin mentioned, in the hands of Allah is all good, and everything in the hands of Allah is good. There's no indication of evil, because when we see something currently, we would see the good and the bad of it. But in the broader system of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, even that evil is for the purpose of good. So I think that's an important perspective to keep in mind, so that we also do not get over caught up with political calculations and other permutations that obviously factor very highly in these kind of discussions.
Jamil, I want to push just a little bit further and say, so, okay, how do you suggest we strike that balance? Because it's quite difficult. On the one hand, we've had a Ramadan plan. We didn't take these contingencies into consideration. We knew that, of course, there's turmoil in the Ummah. But now we find ourselves in a space where, on the one hand, we're concerned about the Ummah. On the other hand, we're concerned about our own Ramadan activity. We know that there's a balance somewhere in between. How do you suggest we strike that balance?
It's probably to harness the spirituality of Ramadan, have very sacred moments during this month of Ramadan. So to use these sacred moments, to go full out with dua for the oppressed, for clarity in this particular moment. So that's part of the struggle at this particular moment in time. I've mentioned power, so I think in terms of prioritizing, let's look at what is in my capacity. So Ramadan is a month of giving. It's a month of generosity. Let us also use our charity to be able to build power, charity for empowerment. So let's broaden what we are currently, what we currently donate to also look at building human capacity, building technological capacity, building, as is vital, and I will say it openly, to support the work of podcasts such as the Isnad Academy, who are trying to fill this particular space. So that is part of the commitment to power that we can express more consciously in this month of Ramadan, and then use the educational space in the month of Ramadan as well, to be able to speak. The anniversary of Badr might come up, the anniversary of the conquest of Makkah might come up. Use these opportunities to contextualize what is happening in the world today in the context of what has happened in the seerah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But all out, the spirit of Ramadan is mujahada. It is striving in the way of Allah. So I would say, beyond what I can just think off the top of my head right now, let us exert ourselves to the greatest extent in this month of Ramadan, especially towards the causes of the Ummah, to be able to truly meet the spirit of Ramadan. And there's one very, very important point that I forgot. In all of these discussions, we are not talking enough about Masjid al-Aqsa. We are not talking about enough that this masjid has been closed, for almost 5 days at the time of us speaking right now. And
will there be any i'tikaf, Mln? Do you know if this is now going to disrupt for i'tikaf, or is it just basically an unknown at the moment?
It's an unknown at the moment. People from different parts of the world have resolved to attend, and there's people who have booked their tickets, etc. But this is now out of the realm. But the idea is that the Israelis should not have that power to make that decision, to be able to close al-Aqsa. Many public spaces are open within occupied Palestine that suit their objectives. this comes on the back of a long process of incitement to be able to close al-Aqsa or limit Muslim worship in al-Aqsa during Ramadan. So this decision doesn't come out of a vacuum. And when the Israelis are given the carte blanche to be able to make this decision right now, it's just giving them the power to make greater decisions relating to Masjid al-Aqsa in the future. So this is an issue that we are really not talking enough about. If we find all the other areas complex, al-Aqsa is not complex. This is an idea for you in the month of Ramadan. Go full out to be able to advocate and raise awareness and speak out for the cause of Masjid al-Aqsa within the framework of the Quran and the Sunnah.
Mawlana, please remember us in your du'as. May Allah grant you a blessed Ramadan. I hope and pray things get better for the Ummah. And if this means that this will be an impetus for the Ummah to turn to Allah like never before and find renewed strength and renewed connection, then inshallah ta'ala let there be khair in that. And we continue to cry and to pray for the people, the innocent people around the world, the Muslim brothers and sisters, whether they are in Iran or in Afghanistan or in Pakistan or in Palestine or in Sudan. May Allah be with our Ummah, be with all of us, and grant us Ramadan Kareem, and may make us from among those who are ultimately saved in this month, in this world and in the world hereafter. Mawlana, Jazakallah khairan. Until next time, inshallah.
Barakallahu feekum. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.